Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared Podcast.
Hey everyone, Mark and Steve on the PBSE Podcast. It is episode 274. We are a coupleship, but sex seems to be a, quote, solo event for him. How do we elevate our sexuality? So I'm going to read the submission by this partner. Pardon my voice. I've had a bit of a cold, a little bit miserable today, but PBSE Podcast must go on.
That's right. We are here. We're like the mail service.
What
is their motto? Like rain or sleet or snow?
Yeah, we're always going to be here. So
that's right.
Use my voice, and if I sniff and have to cough and all the stuff that goes along with it. But anyway, here's the partner. My partner has been struggling with a porn addiction for pretty much our entire relationship. However, Discovery Day wasn't until a year ago. Sex has always sort of seemed like a solo act for him. For years, I would bring up to him that I would appreciate if he could pay more attention to me or, quote, return the favor more often during sex, as I feel slightly objectified and discarded when we have sex. I notice that he only pays sexual attention to me before he finishes, and that once, quote, he's taken care of, he loses all interest in me. Since I brought up how I was feeling and asked him to return the favor more, I am so aware of the fact that it feels like a chore to him. Instead of being present and connecting in the moment when it's, quote, my turn, he will start talking to me about what he wants for dinner or literally anything else. And last week, he even asked if he could turn on the TV after he finished, so that he could watch TV while he took care of me instead of giving me attention and connecting with me. Since D-Day, he says he hasn't been looking at porn or masturbating, but now it just feels like he has replaced masturbation with me, and that I am just there to please him and get the job done. I was hoping that him not watching porn or masturbating anymore would mean that we could finally start having intimate sex and connecting with one another. But instead, I just feel even more disconnected and used afterward. I'm starting to think that he may not be capable of intimacy and connection through sex, and that years of watching porn and self-pleasuring have made him see sex as purely a solo act. Or maybe he's so used to the porn dynamic where women are only there to please the men, ? It's been really hard being with someone who sees pleasuring me only as a chore and not as a form of love and connection. Will he ever be capable of seeing sex as a form of intimacy and connection and not just a solo act? Any advice would help. Thank you.
What a vulnerable submission.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the vulnerability with it. I know, obviously, sex is we say oftentimes is a conundrum, because it is the most universally applicable, or at least one of the most universally applicable topics on the planet. And yet we still, as a society and as people, as individuals, struggle so much to talk about it in healthy ways. And just love how this partner was able to anonymously but vulnerably, describe what's going on in their dynamic. And there are a lot of potential causes for this, and there are a lot of potential solutions. And as luck would have it, for better or worse, this is especially fresh on Mark and I's minds. We're wrapping up filming on one of the courses that we have, advanced courses that we have for our Dare to Connect program for addict spouses and couples. We have a sub-program as part of that your subscription gives you access to on a timed basis, to advanced courses. There are two of them now. One is formal disclosure, getting a coupleship ready for that, to to go through that process with a therapist and dramatically cutting down on the time and financial expense of the prep work around that. That is nearly 30 weeks long, I believe. And this, and now we're just wrapping up a 27, if you can believe it, 27-week course on healthy sexuality.
Yeah.
So Mark and Steve kind of jump into the bedroom, for lack of a better term, and we cover every topic you could possibly think of when it comes to healthy sexuality. And that's something that you can have access to after 6 months in the program as well. So anyway, we'll talk more about that, but definitely a reason to come check out D2C over at daretoconnectnow.com and grab a 2-week trial. But that we have good. I think we have. I'll say potentially good news for this coupleship, right? I think that this couple is, or this partner rather, is in many ways probably at least partially on the right track. It is incredible. We actually talked about this in one of these recent modules that we just mentioned for this course. How Mark and I will fairly frequently in our offices have both addicts and partners, or men and women. They may not even be an addiction dynamic. That when we come to examining the sexuality of the coupleship, how much of a lack of education is present. And it really is honestly surprising. We recurrently will meet with adults who clearly know how to have sex. They're well versed in it. They have 2, 3, 4, or 5 kids, but have, for example, we work with partners who were never told or taught or knew that they were even capable of orgasm. We have addicts or men that we work with who never knew that women were capable of the same. And not only do we have that lack of knowledge, but then we will validate much of what this partner's talking about, right? Culture has done a real bang up job on really misrepresenting the actual nuances of intimacy and sex, the differences between intimacy and sex, because they're not the same. What each of those means, what they entail, and why. Again, we cover that all in depth in the course, but that very much can come from either culture as a whole, or, to her point, very much what we would call that pornified culture or pornified mentality of the guys that we often work with.
Yeah.
Where that is shared. And it should be noted that oftentimes doesn't create distortions just around the sexual act itself or sex acts. It oftentimes creates a distortion about just the norms of what are men or women even looking for in sex.
Yes.
Right. And how they typically behave, what are authentic desires versus not. I mean, it's a miracle any of us, get this remotely healthily right, given all the factors involved.
Yeah. And in her submission, I really related to what she submitted about him. Much of how she described him was me for decades. And as I look back on that, why I came at, sexual sex with my wife from such a twisted place, it was very much, could be a solo act for me. Absolutely. Right. My wife would say, you're here, but you're not here. Right. Where are you? And this very, climax oriented, getting to the goal. And then once you've reached the goal, not really having much interest, just a lot of things. And I think about my upbringing, heavy influences from the media, from peers, from porn, from religion even, right? Lots of that was part of that grab bag of what I brought into my relationship. And she says something really interesting that I thought would be important for us to mention here. She says, she asked the question, has he replaced masturbation with me? That is a very common question, a very common point of pain that we hear from betrayed partners, and a very, not when guys get in recovery, a common frustration expressed by them. Right? I'm sober. I'm not looking at porn or engaging in self-sex anymore, masturbation. But I find that my wife has now become the outlet to satisfy that need or that addiction tendency. I've just replaced her. Right? It's very important to be humble enough, mindful enough to step back and ask yourself, as an addict in recovery, is any of that going on for me?
Yeah.
It could be.
For sure.
Years ago, a team of colleagues I had, one was a prominent neuroscientists from Harvard. We coordinated with some universities. We were asking, why is this sexual process so powerful? And when you take that and you supplant it into the pornography addiction realm, why do sex addicts, porn addicts, end up completely leaving behind their higher true selves and act in many ways against their very value system, throw everyone and everything they care about under the bus? Why do they become Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? What is that about, right? And we did some fascinating research back then for years. And I wrote a book about it, the drug of the new millennium, right? The neuroscience behind pornography addiction. And what we discovered was that there are powerful, powerful chemical processes going on inside the body, hormonal processes that are at the very center place of existence. I mean, we have a cocktail of chemicals, dopamine, endorphins, right? The body's natural morphine. You've got oxytocin releasing, the bonding chemical that bonds a mother to a newborn child and bonds a couple together. You have all of these chemicals releasing. And out of all that research, I started saying to my guys in recovery, be very, very careful what you climax to, because it will be etched in your wiring at a level you cannot comprehend, right? Be very careful what you climax to. And if that's pornography and self-sex or masturbation, you will develop a wiring that is incredibly deep. And, she says, I notice that he only pays sexual attention to me before he finishes. And that once he's taken care of, he loses all interest in me. This is very much a part of the research we did in the early days as to why that occurs, right? You have this anticipation in the limbic system, the pleasure seeking system of the brain, that it wants that dopamine hit at all costs, right? It's experienced it before, it's chasing it again, and it will do anything and everything. And we can literally give up our mindfulness, our higher selves, and just abandon ourselves to that pure pleasure seeking, and it will take over. And we'll block out everyone and everything else to get to that goal, period, right? And then once we've achieved the goal and that chemical wave just washes over us like a tidal wave, then all of a sudden we'd have no interest in what led us to that in the first place. How many times we as porn addicts had porn binges concluded with masturbation and then for a time had no interest in the pornography at all? Sure. Or an hour or a day or whatever, right? This is all part of the neuroscience. And I remember years ago, we did a lot of study about oxytocin, right? The bonding chemical in human beings. And I began saying to guys, asking them a question, are you jumping over oxytocin to get to dopamine? Right? Oxytocin comes when we are intimate, not just sexually, but intimate in all the different human ways. We're building a connection and a camaraderie and a collaboration and communication with each other. We're investing in each other. We talk about the 8 areas of intimacy, one of which is sex. But this oxytocin is more of a slow burn. It's more constant and regulated, right? This kind of ongoing sense of joy and connection and peace with one another. And I certainly did this in my addiction. I would leap right over the hard work required to have oxytocin release in me on a regular basis. I'd jump over the oxytocin to get straight to the dopamine. And I sacrificed my partner as a result in what she's describing here with him. So that neuroscience might be helpful to some listening. Why is that, right? Hey, everybody. PBSE Podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances.
It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today. I agree. Well, and there is that chemical conditioning, but then there, as Mark kind of alluded to, right, there's the emotional conditioning side of it as well. Yeah. Right. And again, this pornified world that we operate in can have that impact on multiple levels. And as we talk about it on here frequently, that isn't just hardcore porn as the typical world might define it. It does extend into every area of culture. You can find too many of those stereotypes that are not accurate in the sexual realm, for example, perpetuated in many a rom-com, right? Or many a TV show or whatever the case may be. And so we find ourselves, you couple that with where we started, right? Which is a culture that, let's just be real, it just sucks tail at talking about sex in an accurate way. I met with a client recently. What his sex education was more or less his parents leaving a bag of condoms in a paper bag on his bed when he was gone one day and said, "Be safe" on the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You pair that kind of thinking with again what the world offers, in pop culture and other sources, and geez, no wonder we struggle.
Yeah, true.
in this area.
Yeah. You very much get the servicing the male, which has been such a pervasive part of our culture, really for the whole history of the world, frankly.
Well, and then just the focus, right, on what is the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's so much of a lack of awareness or understanding for too many of us. Right. Because, and especially for addicts. Right. In this case, we are dealing with a guy who has a history of addiction. What was the pursuit? The pursuit wasn't connection. Now, there may have been fallacies of connection or feelings of connection when we would act out with porn or virtually or, whatever the case may have been. But in many cases, if not most cases with acting out, the feelings are either completely false and fake and synthetic, or they are directed or invested in relationships that are not authentic because they are not sustainable or lasting, right? What we do is we find ourselves conditioned to what? To pursue the orgasm, right? It isn't a pursuit for connection. It's a pursuit for medication, much like what Mark said, right? In many ways, on a psychological level, it is any other kind of addict looking for the thing that's going to help. Well, right? Whether it's emotionally or mentally or numbing or whatever the case may be.
And we, you and I, Steve, in our advanced healthy sexuality course in Dare to Connect, we talked about how you can be mindful about gearing or measuring yourself about where you're at in that process. Do you find you can interrupt and back off of once your brain gets into the pursue climax at all costs? And are you able to step back and pause that, or not at all? Right? Will you throw anyone and everyone under the bus once you're on that track? Right? These are all signs that you have gotten into a dysfunctional pathway with regard to how all this works. Because you're right, it's not about pursuing connection, collaboration, kindness, caring, gentleness, appreciation. It's just getting to the big giant dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is the focus.
As we talk about that, so how do you change this? Because we don't know. I mean, I know that I did about everything she describes about her partner, but I wasn't a thoroughly, bad, evil guy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good aspects of me. I was trying. I was just a product of my culture, not to make that as an excuse.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to change. I was stuck in the climax, pursuing at all costs, narrow place, and I didn't know how to get out of it.
Well, it's a great question. And first of all, we want to praise this addict and others like him, if it is in fact the case, which we take it at the word according to this partner, that he's a year sober from porn and masturbation or self-sex, which is huge, because that is the first step in this process, right? If we're going to break these links that are not just taught, sorry, got a huge itch on my back, that are not just taught, but then reinforced, right? Every time we go down the addiction cycle on a neurological, biological, emotional level, you have to break free of the behavior, because otherwise the brain just continues to learn and slipstream and increasingly acquiesce and push into the subconscious the same pattern, the same process, the same lines of thinking, right? And everything that goes along with it. So the fact that he is already a year sober out, according to what we're being told, is huge, because the first step is you've got to drop the bad pen, right? We have to quit reinforcing the old narrative, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to get rid of that. So he and this coupleship, in many ways, not in all ways, but in many ways, it sounds like they are primed for a change, right? Because we don't have the reinforcing of toxic behavior, at least on that level. So props to both of them for that. The second piece, though, and we talk about this extensively in the D2C Healthy Sexuality course, is one of the models that we use, or analogies that we use, is look at this area of your intimacy being changed, or this area of your relationship being changed. Look at it like a room in a home, say the bathroom, right? We talk about it being a remodel job. And just like with any remodel, we're focusing in and dialing on one area, this case being sexuality. And if a couple just moved into a home, or if they're looking to remodel something, what do? They literally are standing there looking into the room. The first step is to clean out all the bull crap, right? The old fixtures, the stuff that they don't want to keep, right? And then we look and we say, what do we want to add? What do we want to change? How extensive does this remodel need to be? Is this a complete tear out, tear down, and redo? Or is this paint job and new lighting fixtures? Right? What needs to shift? How needs to shift? In other words, this couple needs to start to look at this through the lens of, for years, very actively, and in some ways, unfortunately, it does sound like this is still happening. But for years, addiction and her trauma were the only ones in the room writing the narrative of this coupleship. Right? Mm. They were dictating the story. They were writing the narrative. They wrote the first 10 chapters. One of the beauties of recovery is that going back to my pen analogy, is the more we progress in recovery, the more we put down or take the pen out of the hands of voices like that, right? We take the pen back from the trauma voice. We take the pen back from the addiction voice. And it gives us that freedom and that openness to be able to say, okay, for years, addiction and trauma have guided this far too much. How do we want it to look? This is our story.
Yeah.
It's our narrative, right? How do we want our sexuality and along with the other areas of this relationship to be? It can be anything we want it to be. Which parts do we want to keep from the old way of doing it? Which parts do we need to get rid of? Do we want to scrap the whole thing and build from the ground up? Right? And I think that next piece is where this couple needs to go. But of course, I guess the step, even as I'm talking about this in real time, there needs to be an examination kind of to that point of the remodel and asking those hard questions, right? Coming together and being able to say, okay, which parts of this need to go, right? Which
Yeah,
parts do we need to scrap?
which of my authentic wants and needs are you not meeting? Right.
And which inauthentic needs are being met.
Yeah, I was going to say, right. One of the very important
Right?
for me in this, and this was a really hard thing for me to come to grips with, again, because of my background, my family of origin, to literally be willing to set aside my pride and kind of my stereotypes and and ask myself, has my wife in some way become kind of a substitute for my sexual addiction? And to be willing to even ask that question. Because the tendency could be, well, that's ridiculous. She's my wife or she's my partner. What do you mean? And, here can come the entitlement. Here can come all the stereotypes that go along with it, right? But to ask, what is sexuality become for me in our partnership? Which aspects, if any, of my addiction have come through in this part of our relationship? Do I have any of my old attitudes that I see slipping into our sexual intimacy? Are the reasons I go to sex with my partner some of the same reasons why I would go to my old addiction outlets? Right? You're looking for any crossover, any spillover where you've brought that old addiction stuff into your sexual relationship with your partner. And are you willing to look at what some of those things might be? Not an easy discussion to have with yourself. Let alone talk to your partner about it.
For sure. You're right. You're absolutely right. And the beautiful thing is that this process of change, that we talk about, obviously today we're talking about a subset, but as we so often say on the program, the process of change itself does lead to tangible results. But so much safety is created in the relationship when we simply start moving the process forward.
Mm-hmm.
When we open up the dialogue, when he's able to even start considering and looking at this and saying, not even just in the relationship, but for himself. I mean, if I was talking to this addict one-on-one, hopefully he listens to this, I'd be saying, are you happy with your sex life? Set aside your wife and these other pieces for a second. When you were a little kid and you were, watching those Disney movies and you envisioned being a Prince Charming or being a husband, being a father, is this what you anticipated? Is this what you were really driving for?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is this the kind of sexual relationship you were wanting? I would say that for most of us, probably not. And that's the beautiful part, is because, again, the chapters up to this point have been written. But that's and that's what we try to front here so much in PBSE, but also in our Dare to Connect program. This is not about getting you where we want, where Steve and Mark want you to go. Recovery opens the door to true authenticity and for relationships to become what they were always meant or what we want them to become.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
And and it's interesting because it's so often, I think many of us, and you and I have talked about this, Mark, before, where, especially us addicts and for partners too, right? What's the immediate goal? Stop the bleeding. For partners, it's, I want to quit being hurt. For addicts, it's, I want to quit acting out and hurting her and myself. Right? That was our end goal at the beginning. But you quickly realize as you get into this process, as awesome as that goal is and as beneficial as that is, really the perks behind that, the biggest perks are, it's really just a gateway that you walk through to open up the world in ways that you did not have access to before.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because she mentioned in her submission, I'm starting to think that he may not be capable of intimacy and connection through sex.
Yeah.
And the years of watching porn and self-pleasuring has made him see sex as purely a solo act.
Well, and if he doesn't, to use that remodel analogy, if he's not willing to pick up new blueprints and study them with you, that's very much a possibility. But is the capacity there? Absolutely, because we stand by what we teach in Dare to Connect, because the research, clinical research has been done on this, not by Steve and Mark. People are wired for connection. It's inherent to the human condition. Biologically, whether you believe in the God model or the evolution model, both models argue for the same front, that biologically and otherwise, it is of benefit to any one individual to be wired to connect with the greater whole in society. That applies to relationships intimately, that applies to people in general. We are wired for connection. being unwired for connection, or the desire to isolate, to not authentically connect, is a learned behavior, not a born one, barring very, very rare exception.
Yeah.
And so for the addict, any addict listening here, we would say that there is absolutely that capacity. And we would respond with, where is the willingness?
Where's the willingness? Yeah. And
So,
and along with the willingness comes proactively taking the first steps, often
absolutely.
hard, difficult, right? Wading into the uncomfortable, hearing her pain, hearing her wants and needs, and then a willingness to begin to do something about it. I mean, I doubt this guy, like me. I mean, does he feel completely and totally fulfilled and awesome after, quote, as she says it, finishes and reaches climax and then just disconnects from her and goes on his way? I mean, I can almost guarantee that as he steps back to feel for his higher, better self, that's not fulfilling, right? It's not his ideal. It's not where he wants to be.
No.
But he may just not know how to get out of there.
Absolutely. Or may even not even recognize that, right? So often that's where this collaboration piece comes, because maybe that discussion has never happened for this couple. What could this be?
Yeah.
It's so easy in any area of a relationship to get boxed into, well, this is just the way it's been done for 50 years, or this is the way it's happened, or this is the way I've seen every other couple do it. Lovingly, we would tell you bullshit. That's the beautiful thing. Recovery is freedom. It isn't about not making Jesus cry, although you could make an argument for that. It's not about pleasing your peers or it's not, it's at the end of the day, it's not even about pleasing your partner. It's about you being able to live your life in some cases for the first time, whether you're an addict or a partner.
Yeah.
To stop acting from a place of reactivity, responding to trauma, responding to addiction, fighting it all the time. It's that opening of that gateway to be able to be free in a way that, as the White Book talks about, we could never otherwise know. Yeah. So, grand visions, lots that we've talked about. If you liked this episode, if you found a benefit, I did the math. This is one of 20. This is a piece of one of 27 modules in a healthy sexuality course that you can access after 6 months in Dare to Connect. That is in addition to a 29-week module, I want to say, or 24-week module, something like that, of set of courses around formal disclosure. Preparing for formal disclosure that you can get ready to, which both courses are just a subset of D2C Academy, which will continue to grow after this course, which is a subset of all, in addition to the support sessions on the weekend for addicts and partners, and the 3 sessions during the week, and the Dare to Connect Vault that is ever growing with more standalone content, and the ability to get your questions answered for, at any time, rather than waiting for a podcast episode and be able to interact and engage. It's a place to have support with other people who are in this process right now in real time, not just from Mark and I, and not just from our spouses, in real time. It gives you opens the door and gives you access to attending the D2C couples retreat and applying for that in 2026 in February if you want to take that to a new level. Guys, why the hell are you not in Dare to Connect? I mean, seriously, I'm being real. We Mark and I do not claim genius for genius sake. We chose all the other non-genius options, and so we stumbling around and walking into 50,000 polls and putting our relationships through meat grinders is how we've gone to the point we at. We couple that with some of the best, most cutting-edge training possible in the field, along with our real-world experience, and we have created a program that is changing the way recovery happens. Therapy is getting more and more expensive. I am in the process of having to raise my rates again in my individual clinic. I hate to do it, but we are living in a world with ever-increasing inflation, ever-increasing costs, ever-increasing whatever. $209 for the cost of, for many of you where you're located in the world, a single therapy session, 30 hours of content a week.
A month.
Or a month, sorry. No. Yes, that's right. Yeah, 30 hours. Yeah. It blurs. There's so much. Guys, get into Dare to Connect. Quit trying to reinvent the wheel. You're talking to 2 wingnuts who did it. Just come over. That's all I can say about it. DareToConnectNow.com. There's a 2-week free trial. Come find what everyone else is finding and benefiting from. We'd love to see you there. daretoconnectnow.com. There you go.
Yeah. Thanks for spending time with us. As always, we appreciate your submissions. If you have questions, go to pbsepodcast.com. You'll notice it takes you to the Dare to Connect site now. But at the top of that homepage, you'll see the PBSE banner. Just click on that. And then when you go into the PBSE page, you'll see that you can fill out a form and a question if you want to do it that way. Or come on over to D2C and in our program and get your question answered immediately this week.
When there's an emergency, the police are only minutes away, as they say. When there's an emergency in your relationship, a response in Dare to Connect is only 4 to 6 weeks away. Get an answer tomorrow. Get your butt over here. All right, I'm going to shut up now. Have a great week, guys. We love you. We appreciate you. Be safe, be well, and we will catch you in the next episode.
All right, see ya.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.